Hi, Ben. How are you
Hi,
today?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for making time to have this expert interview with us. I'm so intrigued to just learn more about you, about your wonderful career history, and yeah, I'm just so excited to hear what you got to say.
I've worked in analytics in general for 15 years. I started mostly brand side, working as a social media analyst, social community manager as well while doing that, social and innovations analyst and researcher, and then ended up becoming an insights director at an agency for a year, which was We Are Social. So I had the knowledge of years and years, almost a decade at that point, of working with different brands like BT, Groupon, Microsoft, and then at We Are Social, I was also able to help deliver research and provide insights for brands like Disney, Lego, Adidas, and etc.
Mm,
And then that culminated in me working at the provider side. So having worked at client side, brand side, agency side, now working for a social media platform, Brandwatch, where I was also able to work with a much wider range of industries, of brands, covering multiple types of research from traditional research, market research, to more intelligent kind of research, integrating different kinds of data, doing more in-depth social platform analysis. And
mm.
I recently, as of November, December last year, I went freelance, just taking all of that long time of practice,
Mhm.
being able to now practice that for different range of clients too, for kind of research projects that interest me more about societal changes as well as generational insights. And yeah, it's been 15 years now, but it's to learn from those research projects as well keeps me going.
How did you get into social intelligence, social listening, social media? Like, how did you get into that department?
Right.
Mm.
It was actually as part of my first job role as an apprenticeship, working for a consortium of libraries in Newham Council. My manager at the time, he was very tech oriented. Him and I were the only ones who were not afraid to work in Excel. So he thought, you know what, you like analysis, you can look at data, numbers, and charts and actually build a story out of it. Find something that is similar to that, but that is current, that is modern, just to future-proof yourself in a way. And what made sense at the time was actually social media. So while social media was still in its infancy, I'm talking 2007. So
Mm.
Instagram was still mainly a photo app instead of a social network. And yeah, so I decided to just look into social media as an industry and the brands on it, and add my bit of analysis to it. So being able to look at data, look at numbers, and tell a story through social media data instead of just generic data.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's where the insight generation comes from. And what do you think of like the insights you can get from social media? Do you think you can get way more real kind of insights? Real, I know you can get more real time because you can track, right? You can track li live, even when live events are going on, you can track the kind of social media presence. In the insight industry, there's traditional kind of quantitative research where you use surveys, there's qualitative where you use like interviews and focus groups. Where do you think social media and social insights sit on that spectrum? Like how insightful is it?
Mm. Um, so the two things to that. One, the as you perfectly said, you've got the fact that is real time, right?
Yeah.
So instead of waiting for that quantitative and qualitative data to be collected, whether it's a survey or like for instance, a survey, you need time to create it, time to wait for the responses to come back. Whereas with social media, not only are the reactions real time, but you can also make the analysis much faster and much more efficient. So instead of coming back with a report about a trend a month later, like a month after it's died, you can actually do like very quick, and especially with AI as well,
Mm.
you can make the insight generation and reporting process much faster. So that's the first bit, the fact that it's real time. The second bit as well is that it's the largest focus group that we have on planet Earth, right? You've got everyone who's got access to the internet, pretty much. So long as
Yeah.
they can access a social media account, boom, they can share an opinion. And so that makes it not so much that it replaces traditional research, because it has its role nowadays, but you can see that you can fine tune the panel they want to analyze, whether you want to analyze a generation like Gen Z versus Gen Alpha, or whether you want to target regions or even specific cities. You can even do a report that looks at the opinion of people who watch a marathon in real time while the marathon is actually happening. So that's two of the beauties of social media and its role currently in analytics is real time, makes reporting faster, and two, the biggest panel group they could ever find.
You know, I'm aware that Brandwatch is one of the most popular social media listening tools. Like, how did you get into working for Brandwatch, and how did you find it, and how did your roles change within Brandwatch as well?
Sure. My journey with Brandwatch actually started way before I joined Brandwatch. So while I was starting up with, looking at social media events and upskilling myself as well, I noticed that, I just said, Brandwatch is one of the most popular and biggest social listening platforms out there. And I noticed that they were frequently either being mentioned by someone at the social media event, or they were speaking, or maybe they had like a booth, one of those like marketing booths to say, hey, come here, we'll give you a demo and we'll give you a chocolate in return, just that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's quite interesting that they're there, as well as other vendors like Sprinkler and Synthesia as well. And so I ended up becoming quite friendly with them, because we could talk about social listening, and I can talk about it for hours. So you may need to like cut me back. If you need to, just please do it. Yeah, we basically had like chat. We ended up speaking at some of their events, writing for their blog as well. And because they're based in Brighton, when I moved to Brighton from Reading a few years ago, I said, I'm in Brighton, you're in Brighton, we can make this official. And thankfully,
Nice.
they were also hiring for someone to join the research team, and I thought I can absolutely do that. At the time, I was a insights strategy and insights director, like a research director for a big and great social media agency called We Are Social.
Mhm.
But I saw the opportunity working for Brandwatch, because I thought, I've worked brand side, I've worked client side. Now I want to work in the side of the actual vendor. So what actually happens where the magic happens, you know? And so yeah, that's how my journey into Brandwatch got to be. Inside of Brandwatch, I started as a strategist, which essentially is looking at social media data about a topic. Could be a brand, could be a competitive benchmark, or anything at all. And then having conversations with the client to say, hey, this is where you are right now. This is where you could be. Basically selling the art of the possible. What is possible using social data? What is possible when you actually act with that? And my role was to have those conversations and sell that. To be completely honest with you, I don't like selling stuff. I love research data. I can tell you so many stories and use cases about research. I care more about the story and less about the financial side of it. And so I thought I would just pursue that more. And that's when I then go deeper in the research team, working as a researcher at first, and then as a consultant, as in
Mhm.
not really selling recommending projects, but not really handling the financial side of it, but handling the what are your questions? Oh, perfect. So based on that, I'm going to scope, design, execute, and deliver a research project that actually answers those questions. And then finally, after having done that for a couple of years, I got to the point where I realized that I've used Brandwatch for easily 12 years, and
Mhm.
that's a long time to be using a piece of software. And I
Mhm.
thought, maybe this is my time for me to give back, like mentor others, coach others, train them on the tool, not just on the tool, but the way that I mentored was having honest conversations about where brand, which is great, and where it isn't. So you can then have those honest conversations with clients as well, who say, hey, maybe if you're looking for this kind of analysis, brand which might not be the best, but here's something that could work for you. So it ended up being selling, not really enjoying the selling, so going into research, consulting, and then training and mentoring.
Of course. And that's how you become one of the most, well, in my opinion, you are, yeah, one of the most like experienced and just an amazing person to talk to about social insights. You know, you also represent yourself. I know you go to a few talks, you go to a few events. What kind of topics do you share and talk about when you do that?
Hmm. I like to talk about the things that are possible with social intelligence. There are so many talks about social listening or social monitoring, so I don't really cover that a lot. What really interests me is just taking up a notch and for instance, one of my one talk that I can remember right now was at Social Bakers years back. And it was about the science of social influence. That was around just before the time where the micro-influencer boom. And I basically just took to stage and thought and said, what if you can predict the influence of people? What if you can predict whether, if something happens and this influencer were to catch up on that, it could be a disaster or it could be your biggest brand opportunity. Basically, like looking at the science of that. So those are the topics that I like talking about, because it gets people thinking about social data as more than just a competitor report, as more than just there was an outage and here's a report about it, but more about if we actually use social data, social intelligence in this company, look at all the great things that we could do. Basically, just be more innovative with it.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned before that you did a piece of research that you took to Parliament, actually, and it was about kind of measuring how racism and, those hate crime topics are spoken about online. And yeah, I would love to know a little bit more about that. And you also mentored quite a few people as well for that project. So yeah, just tell me a little bit about that project, because yeah,
Sure.
I love reading about it.
Thanks so much for bringing it up, actually, because it's one of my, I'd say, proudest works that I've done. So back at Brandwatch, we were approached by an anti-bullying charity based in Brighton called Digital Label. They do a lot of work about awareness, as well as making sure that there are safer spaces for people based on their lived experiences, based on them being a minority, based on them being who they are. And every year we pick a topic. The year before this report was about bullying and how young people felt about bullying in social media in general, being bullied, like cyberbullying, essentially. But the year that we did this project was about the trans experience, specifically transphobia and trans support, which is also very topical today as well. And so my role during that project was to take those requirements, while bearing in mind that we didn't really have requirements. The main thing we wanted to do was just raise awareness and drive some change. And we thought the ultimate win will be for us to actually have change happen, taking it to Parliament and kickstarting something, making sure that it will end up into essentially there being safer spaces online for trans people in the UK and in the US, basically globally in the end. And so scoping the project, designing the project. In the end, we ended up using, can't remember exactly how many years, but we looked at over 10 million posts on across social media. It was a heavy project because one of the things that I made sure of was that any research, especially the junior researchers who worked with this project and the senior ones, making sure that their mental health was safeguarded, because social media can be violent. There are some people who have access to the internet who shouldn't, basically, based on some of the comments that I saw. And so, yeah, making sure that everyone's mental health was taken care of, while also looking at innovative ways to show the data, as in there's a lot of data, 10 million posts. How do we visualize it in a way we can just look at the graph and understand what's going on and understand what that means for you? And so, yeah, we looked at plotting categories of posts, and we built a, not sure if you're aware of the, it's called the pyramid of hate, and it's basically like this graph that shows in Nazi Germany during the Second World War, you know, all the what drove hate from the first step to the ultimate step, and we basically replicated that for transphobia, as in this is where we are right now. If it were to escalate, it could actually lead to something really violent, which we would like to prevent. And so we built that, you know, the first of its kind of graph for that. And lastly, we compared the state of support and discrimination towards trans people over time, and correlating that with like world events. So the fact that after Donald Trump's election, the state of transphobia in the US got way worse. And in the UK, it was actually Brexit that drove a bigger spike. So it was actually quite interesting not only to look at the data on its own, but also being able to just look at the context, as in, why is there a spike in violence here? Why is there and also why is there a spike in positive sentiment here, with more people being aware and more people actually being more outspoken about their support towards trans people? So taking it to the research perspective, what I also did enjoy was not only learning myself, but also coaching some of the junior analysts who were working on this, because as far as I can remember, 99%, if not all of the people who worked on this were part of a minority, whether it's in terms of race and ethnicity, whether it was in terms of whether we're neurodiverse or not, whether you know, the sexual orientation as well. So it was quite interesting also to see, you know, the kind of people that this project kind of attracts, or who are more likely to do research about this. But it was nice to be able to work with these people, learn from them, while also coaching them on different ways to look at data and interesting ways to display this. When you have so many options to display data, that too can be a discipline on its own. As in, you can display this in a pie chart, line chart, column chart, a combination of the two, but what's the best way to represent data in a way that doesn't take away from it?
How do you think social insights and social intelligence has evolved, and how it's evolving right now?
Okay, so it's definitely changing for two main reasons, at least two main reasons. One, more people are seeing more evidence that when you take an action based on social data, it works. So 10 years ago, it was more of it felt more like an experiment for a lot of brands. So even only recently started freelancing, way back when, having worked for multiple brands, I realized that some of the bigger brands used to be so insecure about social data, as in, oh yeah, we've got all the tools, we can measure web performance, analytics, we can measure the performance on our app, but we can't actually do anything about it. Like, we can report and we can look at a fancy pie chart, but I don't know whether I should do anything about social specifically. Whereas now, 10 years later, there have been so many case studies, so many reports, so much evidence, so many conferences and events, so many blog posts, so many podcasts. Basically, there's a lot of evidence out there that I think in 2023, if you're a brand that doesn't believe that when you take action with social media data, it works, you're doing it on purpose. As in, you're choosing to believe that, because all evidence out there points to the fact that, you know, based on looking at social intelligence, taking actions from that, is more profitable for a business. You looking at some of the reports that I've done as well in terms of social insights and how they've changed. They used to be quite basic in content, as in, how am I performing? Whereas now, a decade later, it's more about what is the white space, as in, I'm a common one that I used to get, if I'm, let's say, Febreze, what other products shall I add to my portfolio based on what people are asking from me? It could be something like, and that could apply to any industry like tech. Apple could do a social intelligence report and say, oh, what next product should we include based on what people are expecting of Apple as a brand? And another, the second thing, another way that it's evolved over time is in terms of what kind of data you can collect as well. Previously, you could only measure, like when I first started in social intelligence, you could pretty much only measure text. You could only analyze text, as in a tweet, a Facebook post. Now you can do great, like even bigger and better things like analyzing or detecting the logo of your company from a picture, right? And so one piece of research I did for Brandwatch right before I joined them was looking at the benefits of visual analysis and realizing that actually for a lot of brands, their presence is more in the pictures, more in the videos than it is in the text. So you might be more likely to see, I don't know, an iPhone in a picture than actually see, like reading it in a tweet. Those happens, but in terms of proportion. So the fact that you can do so much more with so much more data with social insights makes it not only more evolved now, but even more exciting, because you can now tell an even bigger story. You can now tell a more comprehensive story that looks at not just what people are saying, but also what are they searching for, what are they posting in the pictures, what are they talking about on audio.
Yeah, definitely. And how do you think social listening tools is evolving with the production of new social media as well? Like, can social listening tools track stuff like TikTok? They can? Oh my gosh. Okay.
The nod was because I thought I knew TikTok was coming.
I'm curious.
So the answer is yes, with a question mark at the end, because there are two sides to this. What these tools can do based on what these platforms are providing, and what these tools can offer based on what the tool is. So on one side, for instance, TikTok is kind of stingy with the data that they provide. So it was only recent that they actually started saying, okay, tools can look at basic information like number of followers, or they can look at things like that, but we won't let you do social listening through it, like officially. So yes, some tools have resorted to, I don't want to use the word illegally, but not legally scraping that data from that platform, because they realize that TikTok data is in demand. And so, yes, there are tools out there that can track TikTok data, but it's not the full data that you would ideally be looking for. And in terms of how social tools have or are evolving, because like I said, there's so many social media apps coming up, and as of recent, a lot of new social media platforms have emerged based on people not being happy with the other platforms they're on. An example being Twitter. Now that a lot of people are unhappy with Twitter, now you've got different platforms coming up like Mastodon, which isn't that new, but it's having a resurgence right now. Blue Sky is another one. T2 is another one. There's so many other Twitter alternatives that have recently popped up. And so with that means there are people having conversations, brands wanting to tap into that conversation.
So how would you advise someone if they wanted to get into social insights and social listening and social intelligence?
A disclaimer and a tip. So the disclaimer is that social intelligence as a discipline, as a discipline of work, that might actually not be the right phrase, but I'll say that for now, can be a very lonely space. We don't really have like a tight-knit community online. So yes, we are present, but for instance, community managers, they have multiple communities online. There's even appreciation days for them. Like I think the 22nd of January every year is like Community Manager Appreciation Day. Like there are networks of community managers. We don't quite have the same when it comes to social intelligence practitioners. Not only because our roles can be quite fragmented, social intelligence include social analytics, social listening, social media management, so many things there. And so we're there, but we're very sparse. And oftentimes when we are hired, we are either the only one in the team doing what we do, or the first one to do that. And so while we can find some community, it can be quite lonely. Disclaimer aside, if you're into social intelligence, you're absolutely gonna love it. Reason why 15 years later I'm still here doing what I'm doing. But the tip that I would give would be to get information from wherever you can and make sure that you're not just seeing the curve, make sure you're on top of it and seeing where it's going. So for instance, with AI, make sure that you know what that means for you as a social intelligence practitioner, what that means for your stakeholders. So if you report to social community managers, what does this mean for them? And how does that impact the reporting that you do for them, like your deliverables to them? If you're a consultant, that also would mean that whatever new piece of technology will also 9 times out of 10 appear in those conversations. I am having AI conversations with my clients. I'm sure that now with VR as well, there will be conversation. If it's relevant to the client, there may well be conversations about VR and VR data and what data can we get, with that. So make sure that you know what the latest tech means for you and your stakeholders, and make sure that you also have a view also of, okay, what's next? What should I prepare for? Because social media moves so fast, if you're not on top of things, you're kind of putting yourself at risk. It's just the way the role is, really. The other roles might not require you to, actually I can't think of any, because even if you're a doctor, you need to know like the latest in medicine. But like with social intelligence is definitely important as well, as in knowing where things are, what that means for you, and where things are going. Great question, because the way that I approach it now is really different from way before. So when I first started, I didn't quite realize that I had to take breaks, that I had to take care of my mental health with that as well, because there's so much information you're consuming that if you're not careful, you end up almost becoming your work when it shouldn't be that way. So basically just having, as you perfectly said, having a balance between the two. And so what I ended up doing was basically reserving time for that, but like just keeping it. So if it's an hour a day, then it's an hour a day, but making sure that that hour is followed, but it also doesn't also creep into the other things of life, whether it's studying, whether it's just having a social life, whether it's just doing other things to do. And with that, one thing that I also did learn to do is, which helps me to this day, making sure that the clients I work with, or especially my manager, knows that I do that as well. Because you do need to, like, if you're a social analyst, a social researcher, like working full-time or part-time, employed by someone, you do need to attend those events, those conferences, those seminars, whether they're online or in person. And so I'd say don't just educate for yourself, educate, teach others, but also show others that this means a lot to you as part is inherent as part of your career, so that you can also have the opportunities to upskill with other researchers, which then leads me to kind of the previous question as well, which is that is one way they can network with other social media analysts. So if you've never, like, it took me, I think, 2 years after being a social media analyst before I met another social media analyst.
Wow.
And so it definitely does help when you let your manager know that it is important that you attend these events, whether they're online or in person, because you do learn a lot from others, even if it's another social media analyst that works in a completely different industry. Like you could be working in fashion and then another social media analyst works in telecommunications. This is a lot you can learn in terms of tools that you use, methodology.
Oh, nice. And out of curiosity, what is your favorite social media platform to to use your social listening tools on? Like what platform gives you the most, like, I don't know, most interesting, most real, I don't know,
Adele, I'm loving these
insights?
questions. Okay. I would say Reddit. And
Really?
it was more of a recent passion. When
Yeah.
it comes to socially, no, when it comes to using, I don't like. I consume it. I don't like. I'm a viewer, not a user on Reddit.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
but when it comes to the social listening data, so
mm.
a few years ago they started partnering with social listening tools, social intelligence tools, and that is what actually. After that, it became more conscious of the fact that Reddit can also use Reddit data to be a better platform. So
Mm.
Reddit uses Brandwatch as well. Like Reddit is a client of a tool that also uses their data in a way, because they
Yeah,
then
of
use
course.
that to do you know how you've got like Spotify or Apple Music doing like a year report. um,
Mm.
Reddit does the same as well, and they use Brandwatch data for it, so then they can also see, oh, what should we improve, what should we do better, how should we, design, or etc. And so it's my favorite platform because, one, it's a platform that understands social media data. They don't just
Mm.
understand how to run a business, but they also understand that this is how you run a social media platform.
Mm.
Um, and secondly, it's my favorite because of the fact that, unlike Twitter, you can tell a lot more about without getting creepy, the psychology of people, right?
Mm.
Uh, so on Twitter, if you're on Twitter, you most likely will talk about what you do, your passions, etc., network with others. One on Reddit, you can be one person
Mm.
and have multiple communities you belong to and have those discussions there. Like, the conversations are much deeper and much richer. And so is the data that comes from that as well.
Mm.
And that's the reason why it's my favorite, because I've been able to do some really interesting research from Reddit data. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I could go on longer about that, but I'll keep it there for now.
No, I love that. I've seen, yeah, it's like a recent trend has been like Reddit anonymous, like Reddit stories, and people are really going into detail about their life stories. And
Mm.
I haven't seen that much detail on like Instagram or Facebook, and with Reddit, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more anonymized on there, isn't it? Like there's not much video and images being, or is there? There is? I don't know
Um,
much.
I mean, you're on the right track. That there's a lot of text there, but it's actually there's a lot more media than you would expect from Reddit. Like, sometimes I go on there and I'm so
Oh,
surprised, like, huh, interesting. They do live streams on there. They
oh.
do live streams of like, and I'm talking about, some people live stream like it's Twitch, like them gaming. Some
Mm,
people live stream things like cooking lessons, or like, oh hey, today I'm going to make a pie and I'm going to teach you how to do a pie, all the way
mm.
down to golf matches and like NBA tournaments being live streamed on there. People
Wow.
doing community videos. Like, there's a lot of content that kind of makes it similar to Twitter, except as you said, it is a bit more anonymized.
Mm.
Especially because a lot of people on Reddit have multiple accounts too. So a lot of people
Ah,
on Reddit could have um, how can I put it? You mentioned Instagram, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because
yeah,
Instagram, you're you, right? Like, you're Adele on
yeah,
Instagram. So you can post today, and your followers will know, oh, that's Adele posting, right? Like,
yeah.
that's you, that's your personality or identity. On Reddit, is actually more common that people who use Reddit use accounts as personas. So one
Mm.
can be a photography persona, because this person is a photographer, but then have a different account for, maybe they're really into D&D, but they like to keep those two things very separate. So while in a way, there's nothing stopping anyone from having multiple Twitter accounts, but
Mm.
it's very unlikely that you'll meet someone who has multiple Instagram accounts, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, it can be a lot more anonymized, but the flip from that is that sometimes the freedom of anonymity gets people to share more information, be
Definitely.
more
Yeah.
trustworthy, because at least they know that they can share whatever they want to share, or they can share something that they wouldn't be able to share on any other platform.
Mm.
So yeah, long answer to the question. Favorite platform? Absolutely, hands down, Reddit.
Yeah. Oh, cool. That's good to know. Um, and I was wondering, what inspired you to start BKE Research? What inspired you to, you know, you've worked brand and client side, you've worked agency side. What inspired you to create your own little social insights, baby?
Yeah. Oh. So what inspired me was I had been considering going freelance for a while, but I thought, no,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, keep on with my job. I'm doing it. I'm loving it. Just gonna keep on with it. But then, end of last year, I had to ask myself, okay, I've done this for 15 years. I've given myself evidence that I can actually do this for myself.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I took a dive and I thought I'll just do it. It's given me freedom to pick projects that normally wouldn't have come my way.
Yeah.
And it's also giving me freedom to be more in-depth and more honest with the research I give back. Because oftentimes
Mm.
when you work for a company, you also have the bias of that company.
Yeah, of
For
course.
instance, if I'm working at Brandwatch, no shade to Brandwatch, but like if I were working at Brandwatch, my recommendations would also be influenced by what Brandwatch offers. As in, I
Mm.
can say, oh, let's do this kind of report because Brandwatch can do it. Whereas now I can say, actually, there's this other report that you can do. Maybe your tool doesn't do it, but this other tool can do it. Let's make use of that. So it focuses
Mm.
less on the company that I work for and focuses more on me helping the client answer that question or get into where they want to go.
What are your favorite type of projects to work on when you're giving social insights?
So favorite type of projects, if I were to boil down all the projects that I've done all these years into main categories, I'd say you've got your first category, how can we do better? Your second category can be like, what should we do next? And then the third one can be, what can we learn, right? So how can we do better could be something like, how are we performing? How are competitors performing? How can we improve sales? How can we decrease churn, or etc.? You've got your what should we do next, which can be something like, which influencer should we work with? Or should we work with an influencer to do something else? It can be something like, who should we acquire? Or what should we do? Then the third bit is, what can we learn? And that's my favorite kind of research. Because
Yeah.
the what can we learn, it's while it can overlap with the other kind of questions, it includes questions like, how can we redesign our website to make it more user-friendly or more accessible? Or it could be things like, what can we learn from our audience? Or who is actually our audience? Like, what can we learn from what's happening and what can we do from that? So I'd say, research projects that teach me something, essentially, because I'm learning as well. I'm learning what the client is learning. And those research projects, you get a satisfying feeling when you deliver a research project and you can see that the clients learn something. Like, you can see it in their face. Like, if you're on Zoom, Google Meets, or Teams, or etc., when you see that something has challenged a long-held belief that they had, as in, oh, I didn't think that. Interesting. You get a lot of that through the, what can we learn kind of project. So that's why they're my favorite types. I can do the
Yeah.
others too. That's the one that actually brings me more fulfillment than the others.
Yeah. And do those type of projects keep you in your long career? Do they make you want to stay and continue it?
Totally. Because with not only social media platforms evolving, but also with the way that we communicate and how we communicate evolving, and the way that social intelligence tools are evolving as well. Now there are more ways to answer that question. So while I'm still driven by that question and answering it, now there are more innovative ways to analyze it. Now you can either decrease the time that it takes you to clean data, so at least you can reserve more data to more time to get us inside out. But yeah, I'm still in this because there are new and innovative and different and interesting ways to get to the answer.
Yeah, of course. course. Is there a person within your space, within social insight, social intelligence, that you really admire and really get inspired from?
Yes. Oh, does it only have to be one?
No, you can tell me as much as you
Okay.
want. Yeah.
So I would pick. I'll pick three, and I'll
Okay.
explain why I pick three.
Yeah.
The first one is Scott Brinker. Now, Scott Brinker he's also called the godfather of social intelligence. Oh,
Mm.
so wait, no. The godfather of MarTech, marketing technology. So marketing
Mm.
technology being more than just social intelligence, but also web analytics and CRM tools and etc. Basically, any tool that can help a company function.
Mm.
And what he does every year, and bless him, because there's a lot of patience in doing that. He basically creates a big visualization, a big graph, like a landscape of all of the tools that exist, literally
Mm.
all of the tools that just exist for companies. And the most recent one, I think it was 5,000 tools. And
Wow.
that he basically just picks them all up. He shows them in logos. He puts them in categories. You can see,
Mm.
oh, I'm looking for a CRM. These are my options.
Mm.
He does an amazing job. And he is a great person to follow as well and to learn from. I did had a personal project that was similar to that called Social Martech Landscape, which basically took those 5,000 tools, but only focus on the social intelligence ones, and then reviews them and adds more information that is more relevant to social researchers, as in how much does it cost? Is there a free trial? Can I integrate it with other tools? So
Mm.
like I had to ask for his blessing before I published it, because I thought, oh, I don't want him to sue me, but also just to make sure that I have the support and etc. So great person to learn from. Second one is Matt Navarra.
Mm.
He is. If there's any question about social media, he has the answer for it. And as in the latest in social media. So he has a newsletter, a WhatsApp group as well, where he shares the latest news in it. So imagine like BBC Breaking, but for social media, and it's one person.
Ah.
That is Matt Navarra. So definitely great. And I had the chance to work with him during an event years back, and I saw him at work, and I thought, this is admirable. Another reason why I chose him as well is because he's also quite open about what it's like to be a consultant and keep up to date with social media. And as you said in your previous question, how fast it's evolving, while
Mm.
also having ADHD. And so I do admire how frank and how open he is with, how it's not a struggle for him, even though he has his days, but how he actually makes it work for him. And
Mm.
then the third one, what's the name? Okay, yeah, Dr. Gillian Ney. 'Cause
Oh.
I'm always unsure about the surname. Dr. Gillian Ney. She is
Mm.
the first, and to my knowledge, the only doctor of social media. As in, she
Mm.
has a doctorate in social media,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
she owns a company and online community space, I would call it, called Social Intelligence Lab, SI
Mm.
Lab. And they are an independent social intelligence go-to resource. So they recently started doing like academies as well, just to train the future social intelligence practitioners of tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Blog posts, events. She recently had an event in London called Observe Summit, which was insightful because it had so many people on stage just talking about what's next, what to do for different industries. So
Mm.
yeah, I recommend Dr. Jillian, because she knows a lot about the science of social media, how it act, like the practical side of things. So yeah, I'll mention her too. So Scott Brinker for the technical side, Matt Navarra for the innovation side, and Dr. Jillian for the science and practical side.
Oh, nice. Wow. I didn't know that you could get a doctorate in social media. That's
Didn't know until
that's so
as well,
cool.
yeah.
Wow, nice. Well, I feel like that kind of wraps up all the questions, and I just want to thank you for your time. This has been so insightful, and yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Ben.
Thank you so much for your time as well. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you. So, and if you've got any other questions, honestly, anytime.
Yeah, thank you.